or sorry, a validated API, that you're only going to return one event, and that is successful login after that 3-day period. Is that how it should be correctly interpreted?
In the short term, yes, but you can imagine we want a heck of a lot more than
Right.
just auth success. And the other thing to keep in mind, right, is that we've had partners ask us for, like, we're looking at AWS, for instance, and AWS is like 150 different services. And
Yep.
one of the things that we're looking at is like their internal application logging. And that is not going to have an auth success, right? It's going to have like application wrote whatever to the database. And that's what some partners are asking us for. So we'll report some of that bit as well. But I'd say 99% of the cases, we're looking at Syslog data, right? So Andy logged in, auth failure, file, whatever. So that is what we're looking at. But over the course of time, we're going to have, let's say, a standard. So auth failure, file event is not appropriate for all SaaS products. So those are the sorts of things that we're going to have once we establish kind of a standard baseline. And as we get better and better at using our internal app wizard tool to build events.
So really you're looking for either a webhook or a syslog feed to be able to process. Is that correct? And then
Yeah.
ultimately to be able to respond back.
Yeah. So like technically it's webhook is ideal because they push us the information and we just consume it and we listen for it. But in most cases, we have to pull for it, which means every X number of minutes, we have to go to the endpoint and we have to say, hey, get me the last hour, whatever, 60 minutes worth of data. And then like we kind of have to deal with it from that point on.
And
Thank you for
Andy,
answering the question. Go ahead.
it should be noted, we add alerts on a regular basis. I mean, I think we've added 2 this month. So our dev team continues to look for ways to enrich the data and dig deeper into the applications, whether it's Microsoft or Dropbox or whatever, to get more data out of there. So I think
Oh,
that
there's
that
no
alert.
question that you
And
guys are adding value. Go ahead, Liran. I
well,
was just
like in the community meetings, like we've had people ask us for events. Like one of the latest ones was when the auth token gets revoked, right? That was previously appearing as like a standard log out because that's what happens, right? But we had a partner contact us and say, hey, can you actually tell the difference between a standard log out and when a token gets forced revoked? And the answer was, why, yes, we can. And what a wonderful idea. Let's go ahead and do that, right? So then when you guys bring us these things and the data allows us to break them out into their own event, we absolutely do that.
so let me ask then how you prioritize. Well, I don't mean to dominate this. So Ben, I'm done asking my question. I'll do it otherwise. This is your show, not mine.
Not a problem. Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on how far around the globe you are. Um, as you may have noticed, we're joined by our VP of Dev, Liran, today. He's here to answer a couple of questions, but other than that, Ben and I are going to do our usual tap dance and tell bad jokes and try to keep you guys amused. Let's start off the way we do every week. Does anyone have any burning issues, anything that's really crisping your bacon that we need to talk about that we can help you out with right away?
Following up on last week's office hours when we were going through what comes through Android and how that reflects with the device ID, has that been explored further?
Yep, we're still working on the Entra ID and everything. Adam and I are working on that today and generating a bunch of alerts to see what does and doesn't generate Entra IDs, and so how to use them. So yep.
I actually just emailed Adam because he had asked for some time to I send him all the Entra IDs for my iPad, iOS, Android. And I emailed him to see if he was available this afternoon.
Awesome. I'm sure he
I'll
appreciates
be
that.
asking for your input from your Newton next.
Enrique, just don't give him your social security number if he asks you for that.
He already did. I shouldn't have. Shit. Let me change it.
Yeah, he only
Let me
needs a few
change it.
parts on his truck fixed. That's oh, very good. Ben, did we have anything on our agenda today that was specific to your side of the house?
Not really. I think everything kind of got shifted when Liran said he would join us, and I was very excited about that. So I'm gonna let him talk, and I'm sure people will have questions for him.
Fantastic. Since I've got a couple of account managers here, Alex and Connor, I'd love to hear your feedback. Are you guys getting good input from our partners about what they want out of App Wizard? Are they following the instructions and reaching out to you? Are we getting those forms filled out? What does it look like from your side of the house?
So I do have a form and only had a couple people like actually fill it out and correctly. So if you guys want to fill this out with your own input, it will direct to the correct account manager and they will reach out. Other than that, oops, or just say, yeah, just if you can complete that, that will help us get more input on what we should put in precedence for the
So as a
development.
quick reminder, if you've got a client with a line of business app and you would love to be able to monitor that, we'd love to hear that feedback from you. We do have a process in place to make sure that our dev team can get through it in a timely manner with all the information they have that they may need up front. Reach out to your account managers. If you're not sure who your account manager is, reach out to Ben or I, and we'll put you guys in touch. And let's see. Yeah, we're taking that offline, Ben.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, very good. Excellent. Liran, thank you so much for making the time, brother. I know you're one of the most popular, what do you say, the popular girl at the dance. Everybody wants your time. So we genuinely appreciate you breaking out and spending a little time with us here down in the trenches. What's your perspective? Anything that from our side of the house or from our partner side of the house we could do to continue to help App Wizard move forward, and anything there that you want to tell us?
So, number one, if you ever saw me dance, you would retract that statement. Number two, I'd say the thing that I think is worth sharing is the fact that on the surface, App Wizard by itself has a slight so what sort of impact to it. I think as an engineer, it's really interesting what we've been able to do in the background in terms of expediting things, but ultimately our MSPs are interested in what does this mean for me? And I think what it means for you is that your clients have a whole bunch of other mission critical applications that need to be monitored aside from Microsoft Office 365, email, Google Workspace, and basically the applications that we monitor today. And the examples that I used during last week's reveal was some industrial control application that controls, say, functions in a manufacturing plant, or an electronic medical record system. And even maybe the best possible example of this is an accounting application. If I was a bad actor and I could get into your accounting application, I could probably do a nice bit of damage, or your customer's accounting application. But the reality is we've evaluated both the QuickBooks Online and Xero, which is kind of a more popular in Europe and Australia, accounting applications, and they don't really provide Syslog data. So our marketing team and Jim kind of have this movement that we're asking partners to share and get on board, and that is to ask the software vendors to make the Syslog available so that as an MSP, you can monitor this, because in my view, it's only a matter of time until you get notified that there was a breach in either the industrial control system, the EMR, or the accounting system, right? The IBM breach data report that I looked at, which was published, I want to say July 24th, 2023, the average time to detect a breach was 203 days, I think, which is really a long time, right? If I can get into your system as a bad actor, and you're going to give me for the better part of a year, I'm going to get a lot of good stuff. So the key for us is let's get that data out there and let's push the software vendors to make that data available. And then as an MSP, we want to empower you to go to your client. So when QuickBooks does make this available, you can go to them and say, hey, you guys are using QuickBooks. Would you want to know if somebody from, say, Pakistan logged into QuickBooks and they're not supposed to? Would you want to be aware of that? Because as your security provider, I'd want to be aware of it, and I'd want to report it back to you. And I think the bottom line is that the more stuff that you monitor on behalf of your clients, the more secure your clients are, and the more revenue opportunities are presented for you as an MSP using a tool that you are already using today. I think that's kind of the big message here from my standpoint.
Fantastic. Appreciate that, Liran. I know this is a bit of a lift. I'm just kind of curious, for anybody who joined us last Thursday and has at least a passing understanding of what App Wizard is, do you see the opportunity to monetize this, or to at least security-wise reach out to your clients? I mean, do you think that's a target-rich environment to get line of business apps into your stack, or do you see that this is going to be like MFA? It's going to be an uphill battle. Andy, I thought I saw your hand almost go up.
Well, I was rolling up my sleeves. So the answer to your question is, I think it's going to be the customer has to be educated as to the value proposition and why it's good for his business or her business to know that this is occurring. I think so much of this is like I want to say the 70s, when people were just beginning to become aware of technology and how that was changing things. I mean, that's when the computers started, right? And it takes a long time to build that forward. I go back and date myself a little bit now. But to help them really connect with why is there a risk to me? I mean, people are doing this all over the world and I haven't been stuck. Why would I get targeted? In helping them overcome that bias.
That sounds like a lot of the same talk track that we're using currently, with just getting them to understand how important it is to monitor Microsoft or G Suite or what have you.
Yep.
So, a little bit of an uphill battle, but it sounds like you guys are fairly well armed, and look for our marketing folks to continue to help out where they can, when they can. Well, that was a quick 15 minutes. Anybody else got anything?
I'd love to know
Liran, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I would love to know if any of you guys have any applications right now that, you know, you or your clients are using that we don't monitor, that you would like to be on the list. Or...
Well, I submitted again through the posting that was requested in the chat here. But I think for my MSA, for my MSP, if I had to look at anything, I would like to know that my apps are covered. So that would be like Cyber CNS, that would be Kaseya One, that would be my VSA, that would be my Autotask. I would love to have those tools covered, because then I know my house is clean, right? And I think that should be an easier target market first to establish and get comfortable with. So whatever it is, it could be ConnectWise, you know, you name it.
Liran, if I can get your input there, that is, I think, a fair question. Do MSP tools, are they any better about sharing data than line of business apps, off the shelf sort of applications, or are they equally bad?
It's a very broad question, right? Every application is kind of unique and different by itself. Having said that, we do have an in-house expert that you guys probably all know, Adam Steinoff. He is our MSP tools guy. But I think for the most part, the MSP tools do a good job. So Kaseya, right, ConnectWise, Autotask, they do a pretty good job of logging the events internally. So that's step one. And then step two, make all that data available to us via API. I think they do a pretty decent job at that.
And then have those alerts come to our mobile app or to our dashboard and allow us to respond immediately or automatically with some logic.
Yep. So that is exactly what kind of App Wizard is intended to do. Now, Adam, I know, has evaluated some of those things, and they may very well be on his roadmap. And If they're not on his roadmap and we haven't looked at those things before, it will very much be part of the App Wizard review process where we evaluate those tools and whether or not we consider those to be viable APIs.
I have a question. I agree with Andy regarding our stack. I think that's the primary focus. One, helps you develop. Two, helps us better understand and showcase our customers. And three, protects our house. But I think a very common application, but not everyone uses an enterprise version of our customers is like their splash tops, team viewers, things like that, where splash top we just enable for one customer with Entra AD authentication. So that would kind of be a great solution because that's always a risk and that's always our concern. And we hate to deploy that for them, but when they want to remote work and they're fixed on using that tool or use it already, I think that would be a great value to secure their environment.
Appreciate the feedback on Enrique, and I'm sure you've already put in the application with your filled out the form with your account manager.
I actually have a question for Liran and Ben for this matter, and that is, I would love to see App Wizard and Unify merge because I cannot perceive of an application that we would want to monitor for a customer that wouldn't be used solely on their managed devices. If you think about QuickBooks, would they be using it on a guest computer? No. If you think about an EHR, no. If you think about enterprise ERP program, no. I think App Wizard should be wed to Unify and give us some real value there.
So absolutely. And if there was an unfamiliar device logging into your QuickBooks account, wouldn't you want to know about that as soon as possible?
This is the power of App Wizard when melded with Unify, and it really completes the holistic cloud security, device security marriage of really what you're calling is workflow security now.
And so, Andy, that is very much on the roadmap. So from a technical standpoint, we kind of have to build a Unify kind of service handler so that whenever we get data from multiple products and multiple endpoints, we have a place to send the data that Unify needs to do its job. So I can't really go too much deeper into that aside from saying that is 100% on the roadmap for App Wizard to get what we need agent data, basically accomplish what you just said. And so whenever we can get agent data, we will get agent data and connect it to Unify.
So if you take this just one step further, how about a more robust alerting mechanism that would include point of contact at a customer for a particular workflow in addition to the MSP? So let's say we have an ERP breach or an EHR breach that's been detected by App Wizard and Unify. Not only do I want to be aware, but I want to give the client as quick a heads up to respond. And so, being able to write a rule and respond that says, send a text, send an alert to this mechanism, and that's whatever that costs. That to me is really valuable. They're learning about it as rapidly as we are, and this would be for a complete. Hey, your EHR is being accessed by a device that we don't know about, for example.
So that what you just said right there, like SaaS alerts contacting your customers on your behalf, is a bridge that we haven't been willing to cross. And the reason for that is because early day SaaS alerts, the MSPs that we worked with basically said, we do not want you contacting our customers, right? But I hear what you're saying, where if it's customizable, now you can make the choice. Do I want this or do I not want this? So then it ultimately, right, comes down to a question of prioritization from our standpoint. How does this fit in, right? Those are the decisions that we're
It could be the
forced to make.
manufacturer that I want them to know as well, like the app provider, for example, right?
Right. But it's ultimately a question of prioritization, right? So when we decide what it is that we work on, right? Finite resources, all that stuff that you guys have to deal with too on a regular basis. Do we want to build the App Wizard Unify connector, or do we want to build what you just said, right? So we have to find a way to make that measurable and prioritize those things and then make the prioritization decision, which, by the way, we're not going to get it right 100% of the time. Hopefully we get it right more often than we don't.
So what if I say this, Liran? Will Respond be able to act on the App Wizard output?
Eventually, yes.
Okay. And then in response, am I able to send alerts to whomever I choose?
Today, no. Today, it's basically Respond is intended to be kind of an in-house self-contained SaaS alerts tools,
Okay.
which means all your techs, you can send alerts to your techs. But if you want to get your customer in there, there's ways to make that happen, but it's
I could
not
use
really
the
intended.
v-text at the very least. In other words, I could send a text message.
Or your PSA.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just kind of going, there's some methods here. It exists, but it is kind of like scratching my left ear with my right hand, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just trying to establish my ask isn't that you make this easy for me. I'm just saying, give me these capabilities so that we can then discuss with a particular client or application provider and say, how do you want us to alert you when we see this happen?
Yeah, I would just ask Ben. Ben could probably figure it out how to do it. And if Ben
Okay.
can't figure it out,
Cool.
he'll just ask me to build it. So, that's kind of how we do things.
That's awesome. I do have a
Um,
question for you, Liran, if you don't mind. So do you ever see App Wizard being like integratable with like like Cisco Meraki? They have it's kind of like they're managed by like their access points are managed by and their switches are managed by like a web interface. And do you ever see being able to interface with that? And like what information would we be able to pull from it?
That's a multi-layered question and a very good question. And now I know why you asked me to join this meeting, Ben.
No, it wasn't for that.
No, you could put me on the spot in front of everybody. But right, like App Wizards, our ultimate goal and my goal from the very beginning has always been to protect small businesses and like medium and large. But to me, the small business, the bakery, the law firm, these guys do not have the money to go hire a full-time CS analyst, right? So they hire our MSPs and they pay you to secure them. And when I see a breach occur, I see little Timmy's college fund going down the river. And like that's kind of the way that I think about this. So then to answer your question, Ben, I'm not familiar with the tool that you just named, but if we can make a strong use case for this tool is going to help protect our customers, then that is something I'm interested in evaluating regardless. And does it have a syslog? What data do we need to get out of there in order to protect? And then we get into the viability question. Right, so if 50% of our MSP community is asking for this tool, it's going to go very high up on the list. Then we say, is it viable? Does it have an API? We kind of take it for granted, but it's not always the case that the API exists. And then the second layer of that question is there syslog data available? Do we know where Ben logged in from? Do we know that Ben even logged in, or even are they even logging this information? And if all those pieces fit together, then we can go ahead and pursue it. But in some cases, that's not going to be the case, which is where I think the movement that we're trying to put together is so critical, because when 1,000 or 2,000 MSPs go to a vendor and say, hey, we represent like 25% of your customer base, and you need to start doing this. Because what's going to happen is, and in the world of software, if they don't, then at some point there's going to be a young, scrappy startup that comes around and they're going to be cheaper and they're going to have the syslog data and you guys are going to find them and you're going to switch. And before you know it, the investors of the big company that you all just left is going to be like, what happened? What did you guys do? And that's where the small fish now becomes the medium fish and eventually the big fish. So it is very much a movement. And I think as part of this ecosystem, you guys push for this.
I think we've seen that with like Halo PSA, where we've gotten a lot more requests to integrate with that. People that are leaving the big guys and going to the smaller ones that listen to their customers.
And the Halo PSA work started yesterday. So that's happening.
Thanks.
So Liran, that'll be done Q5.
Yeah, of 2028 exactly.
It'll be any week now. Nice. Andy,
Very
go
good.
ahead.
This is around compliance and vulnerability. You've made a real effort, Liran, around giving us the ability to evaluate security specifically in Microsoft, and I assume when and if Google ever makes that happen for Google Workspace, we'll have that. How as I'm looking at providing compliance as a service or a more robust security posture that allows me to look at both the device and the cloud, how could I find synergy or a way to get information from both SaaS alerts, and I'll just use Cyber CNS as another for the device endpoint. It seems to do that reasonably well. How I could merge this information and have a more cohesive, in other words, let's say I get in a ticket, this is where I'm going with this. Ultimately, let's say I detect something on a device that shouldn't be happening, right? And that device now is accessing something in the cloud. I would love to have the ability to send an alert to SaaS alerts that says, hey, this device is suspect at the moment. Is there anything going on with it at the moment from the cloud perspective? So I'm really trying to take the unify piece and bridge these two in a more dynamic method.
The follow-up question for you is, right, like we can only act on data that we receive.
Yep.
So at some point, we either need to build a feature that allows you to go in, select an account, ben@saasalerts.com, and say block everything that we can block. So that's kind of one way to do it. The other way to do it is to push data from an external application into SaaS alerts that you could then tell it, hey, when I send this thing to you, you build a respond rule that then consumes it and does exactly what you want it to do. So I guess help me understand kind of what that
So
use case looks
here's the
like.
premise. Let's say that I have detected a compromise occurring on a machine and I have isolated it, but I also am able to collect from it any tokens that were being used with Microsoft 365, and I'm able to, with Unify, to extract that and give this to SaaS alerts so that we could identify if those tokens are currently active.
Well, I would say in that type of situation, it's more of a one-off sort of situation, because like the easiest way to do this is go into SaaS alerts, pick your account, and then say expire all logins, block sign in, or change password, and that's going to destroy all the existing tokens, right? Like kind of by definition. So
But
if
that
you
it
want,
might impact hundreds of employees instead of a localized set.
not if you do it for one account.
Okay.
So one way is to kind of add a kill switch at the account level within SaaS alerts, which is something that we have talked about, but really hasn't surfaced the way that a lot of other higher priority type issues are. And then the second piece of this is whatever secondary tool that you talk about, let's get that data into respond. And if we can get that data into respond beyond simply getting Syslog data, right? So that's like, to me, that's the first half of the movement, is let's get the Syslog data in. But then we're kind of making the assumption that just because we have Syslog data, we can now block the account for, say, QuickBooks Online when they make that available. But we also need those vendors to build us an API that allows us to block those accounts, right? So when a bad actor does something on a device or another cloud account and that thing fires, let's pretend we have QuickBooks Online as an available feature. You're going to have to pick, right? Do I want the respond rule to block QuickBooks Online and the Microsoft account, or do I only want to block the Microsoft
Oh,
account?
I'm totally with you that there could be multiple apps as you expand App Wizard. And that's what's kind of driving this thinking, is that when I have identified a problem at a customer, and let's say it's a device or it could be a group of devices, is there a kill switch that we would ultimately be able to have that could be as broad spectrum as stop all apps that App Wizard is aware of, or stop just this single login?
It depends on the application, because that function has to exist. But let's isolate this down to Microsoft. We would have to build, right? So like we have the ability to block sign-ins in Microsoft. So what you're talking about is designing a user interface that allows you to do this on demand for one account, two accounts, or all accounts in a given organization. So I think that's a good enhancement request, and something that we want to run by kind of the community and say, hey, is there an appetite for this sort of feature for us to bake that into SaaS alerts?
Silence is not good for my question.
I thought I answered your question.
You know, you did, but your question of the community, silence is not good. There's not
Oh,
a voice echoing here.
yeah. And that's it, right? Steve Jobs, right? And when you get into product management, how do you not quote Steve Jobs every other day? So we do that very much. And he said something like prioritization isn't a matter of organizing all of the great ideas that you get. It's a matter of isolating what it is that you're going to be doing, right? Like basically like what you're not going to be doing. Like that's what it boils down to. Because if I had unlimited resources, Andy, I'd do everything because I
Totally
see
with you,
value in
Liran.
what you're saying. But we just have to prioritize, and it's a brutal and it's difficult. And no matter what you do, someone's going to be left disappointed.
Yep. And I just got from Alexandra, don't submit more than one application for more than one app. So that was the other piece that just came back. That's why I was chuckling. I'm thinking that there can be more than one app that would be good for App Wizard.
Indeed, there is, but we do. I mean, I hate to go all paperworky, but we do have a process, and I want to make sure to be giving equal time to everyone and give our guys in dev a structure to follow. That's why it's one title per form, and Alex is fantastic at keeping us all honest about such things. So
Yep.
thank you, Alex.
No problem.
We've had a number of folks join since we started this conversation. So I'd like to, take the opportunity to loop back. Is there anything on anybody's mind that isn't specific to the App Wizard? I know we've been talking pretty heavily about that and where we'd like to go in the next 62 years with it. But is there anything else that's sitting on anybody else's mind that's a little more immediate, maybe this month or next quarter, about where we are or where we're headed?
Just want to thank you all for the recommendation of doing critical alerts to my T-Mobile email. Now I'm getting them. Obviously, nothing related to disconnects of APIs and things like that, but I am seeing critical alerts a lot quicker or immediately.
I'm genuinely glad for that, Enrique. Absolutely. In general, does anybody have anything else that's been on their brain that they wanted to chat about here while I've got both Ben and Liran pinned down?
Oh, quick question. How's the Datto RMM? What's the latest integration?
Oh, was
Have
it
we
in
talked-
Central?
No, that we're missing the option for Datto RMM to be able to configure it for the new thing where we're getting the Microsoft Entra IDs and stuff.
I
How's that coming along?
haven't heard anything. How about you, Anthony?
No, I haven't heard any updates on that. So I think that's another one of, as Liran said, yeah, I've got 500 brilliant ideas. How do I figure which one I'm going to focus on this week? And
Yeah,
we'll see
if
if we
you
can get you some updates, Enrique. One note on that, we are going to go to every other week for our for this particular meeting. If you guys have a burning desire to have it more often, absolutely reach out to your account managers. But we found that I think with the amount of content and that we've got to share is really more appropriate for a bi-weekly. So we'll be here this week, and then actually because of the holidays, throwing wrenches and monkeys and everything, we won't be back until January. So we're going to save up a bunch of good stuff for you guys and have to chat about then.
What
Okay,
did
but
it? Go ahead, Enrique.
the RMM wasn't a feature. That's part of the new release, but you guys forgot, I guess, to put in the help files that Datto RMM was still not available.
Yeah, I can follow up with Adam on that, or Enrique, or when you talk to him. He'll be the guy that will answer all that. He does that whole MSP tools section.
Okay.
Mhm.
Fantastic.
Did anybody have any questions, about anything else that Liran's working on other than App Wizard? Or keep in mind he was also in charge of Fortify too.
Is there anything Liran isn't in charge of?
That's a good point.
Marketing and
MSP
sales,
tools?
Anthony.
MSP tools. There you go.
Yeah.
Dave
So
Carter had a question, by the way. I don't know if you guys
Yeah.
see that.
Yeah, digging through that.
he
So
said,
I can answer that,
okay.
right? Ignore means, oh, like I know that Ben's gonna start working in an hour, and if I can just ignore this, Ben will eventually take over and I can go to sleep, and then Ben will have to deal with this. So that's what ignore is good for. Reject means I made the decision that I'm not gonna block this account. That's kind of the big difference. I hope that explains it.
It's a great explanation.
You're very welcome, Ben.
That's awesome. Well, Liran, is there anything that you wanted to tell these guys? Anything that you're working on that for next year? Or anything that you can talk about?
I think one thing that we're going to be working on for next year is enhancing the way that we do whitelisting, looking at doing it at the ASN level, or call it the internet service provider level, because we have a lot of examples, specifically in Europe, where you might say whitelist France, but the data center in Western Europe is in Dublin, Ireland. So that causes a lot of chaos for a lot of our partners. This happens in Australia too, and then in Canada and the Pacific Northwest. That's also kind of a big issue. And then another thing that I've been wanting to work on for a long time is a universal error handler. We don't handle errors from 100 or so different API endpoints as gracefully as I'd want, right? And there's, call it 5 different errors for each of those 100 endpoints. So we're talking about 500 potential errors, each which may need to be handled a little bit differently. And when you guys get those errors on the UI, we don't do as good of a job as I'd want to tell you what you need to do. The nice thing about like the world that we live in, and I always tell my non-IT friends and family members, you can fix 90% of your issues if you just reboot the thing, right? And so like that'll kind of work with the API side of things, but sometimes it also doesn't work. And when that happens, we want to give you what we call graceful error handling so that we can tell you exactly what the problem is. That is precisely right. I love that TV show. Thank you very much. Eric, you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question about Fortify and adding the new permissions, or that box that pops up now. When I notice it's popping up with every new client that we add. And I thought maybe I misunderstood previously that it was going to be a like a global setting that we could do for all of our existing connections already. Is that the case, or is it just for new clients and we're going to have to go and upgrade all the other ones when those new features get added?
Yeah, in order for you, so the reason for that, right, is that like our philosophy is to always ask for the least permissions that we require. Good from a security standpoint, not so good from your convenience standpoint, right? So then we made the decision, and we're kind of refactoring the entire Microsoft way that we do things. And as a way to get that started, when you do a new connection, you have the ability to select and make that decision for yourself about the convenience of auto updating the permissions on an ongoing basis, or saying, nope, I don't trust anyone with anything, and I will choose when and where we do those upgrades. So I don't exactly know where that is. I have to check with our Fortify engineering team on that, but the plan is to roll that out across all of them so that when we do enable that feature, that same upgrade available prompt that you see will be available for everyone, not just the new connections. And if you want to take advantage of those new, they're mostly CIS recommended actions. And if you want to take advantage of those, you are going to have to go in and upgrade those connections. Otherwise, you're going to get back permission type errors if you don't upgrade those.
Okay, so sounds like we'll have to go back and add those when we do when we upgrade those clients in the future.
Yeah, assuming you want to be able to apply those new CIS recommended actions, then you will need to go in and either do the upgrade one time and select auto update so you don't have to do it again.
Got it.
Or do it one time and say do not auto update. And if and when, I mean, I'll be honest, like we're looking at doing custom actions as the next big phase for Fortify. And those are going to more than likely going to require additional scopes, additional permissions, if we're going to give you a tool to build your own and roll those out. But yeah, so it's a choice that you just have to make. But whether it's one-time thing or every time we add new scopes, you have to go back in and do it.
That's a great topic to talk about, the custom controls. It's definitely something we've had requested by several partners. So I'm super excited that you guys are doing that.
Yeah, I think we like to use a crawl, walk, run approach whenever possible. And as of now, the way that I'm thinking about this is the classic example for a configurable or parameterized recommended action is when we're talking about enforcing MFA for all admin users. Last I checked, Microsoft still recommends that the break glass account does not have MFA. It just has a ridiculously strong password.
Yep.
And depending on the client and how much you're charging him, I would also probably set up a break glass respond rule so that if that thing ever logs in, I get a critical alert, because that is it's a break glass account. So when you do the recommended action of enforce MFA on all global admins, that one is a classic exception. And we don't have a graceful way of handling that today. So with the customization feature, you can go in and you can then say, except for the break glass account, everyone else needs to have MFA. That's probably how we're going to get that started. And then eventually I would love to get to a point where you can build your own conditional access policy. And if you've ever gone into the Microsoft UI and built a conditional access policy, you just look at Ben's face. Yeah, it's not ideal, let's just say. So we'll try to kind of do what we can to improve that. And then more importantly is give you the ability to roll those out at scale. So you build a cap and then you click a few buttons and you just roll it out to 100 different Microsoft tenants.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, that was the one thing I was really excited when you guys added the DLP, when we added that to Fortify, was just knowing the Microsoft wizard and how much of a pain in the butt it is.
That was all Ben, by the way. Ben came to me and it's like, hey, can we do this? Like, what is this, Ben? Explain to me why we want to do this. And he did, and okay. And now I think we have all the US based DLPs in the system. And if you guys want the international ones, just let us know.
I'll put in a enhancement request for that. Liran had one of those from our friends down under last night.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, I forget what
DLP.
standard they use. It was something cyber.
Looks like Adam is struggling to connect Sassler's to Ninja One. I think the answer to that question is, Adam, it should be working, and we can ask our Adam, the MSP tools, our MSP tools product manager, to connect with you to try to help out and dig into what is happening there.
Yeah, last week there was a problem mapping the customers or the organizations. Now it's just not connecting to the instance at all. So it seems to be regressing in its capabilities.
I heard something about that from Adam about, did you sign up for the MDM beta or anything?
No.
Okay. There was something that was revolved around that. The Ninja's making some serious API changes. So.
And they shockingly did not consult us about those API changes. Adam, I made a note. I will contact Adam about this for you as soon as we're done here and ask him to get in touch with you.
Yeah, cheers. Because I've switched from Automate to Ninja, so obviously Unify isn't working at the moment.
Well, cool. Anthony, did you have anything that you wanted to talk about, or?
No, actually, that's coming to the end of my talk track, except again, a quick reminder. This particular meeting has been fantastic. We do appreciate everyone's adoption and joining us, but we're back. I think it's the second week of January. So you'll have your holidays to yourself at the very least. Of course, we're not going anywhere. We never take time off. Even Liran only takes a day off every year. So don't be afraid to reach out to us if you guys have any technical questions throughout the holidays. When I
Hey,
know
Anthony, I
that,
have one more thing I want to say.
please.
So one of the things that we've seen from partners on both the response side and the Fortify side is kind of creating a respond rule, setting it to automatically block accounts, and not really doing much testing, and then kind of being surprised when it does things that it's not supposed to do. And the that's on the response side. And then on Fortify, similar sort of approach where you look at a recommended action, and we've had support tickets come in where, based on what we're reading on the support ticket, it's fairly clear that all of the information that was provided wasn't fully read completely, and partners are kind of getting themselves spun up a little bit. And so what I would always suggest is crawl, walk, run, right? So if you have a Microsoft testing tenant, go ahead and connect that to Fortify and enable and do the recommended action there first to see what it does. And if that passes your initial set of testing, then good. Then do it on your own Microsoft tenant to make sure that that operates exactly the way that you want it to be operating. And then on the response side of the house, we always suggest evaluate the data, right? So I'll give you a classic example. We had one of a really good partner identify a pattern where bad actors were logging in from Lagos, Nigeria. Then they were logging in from the United States with a VPN. So they consulted us about this, and they built a rule that said, if there's a successful login from Lagos, Nigeria, and then within 24 hours, that is followed up by an auth success from a VPN, we want to block that account. So when they did that, it was kind of like looking at the trend, looking at the data, identifying a pattern. They initially started that as a do nothing rule so they could see what it was doing. And they saw what it was doing, and that built up their confidence. And they said, yeah, it's doing exactly what we want. It is catching the right things. Now let's set it to approve manually. So that goes back to the question we had before. Do I ignore? Do I reject? And once they built up confidence and their techs were consistently looking at the data, making sure that this is the right scenario, and they were manually approving, then when it got to a point where they're manually approving 99% of these, then they made it into an automatic rule. So that's kind of using a developer sort of mentality where you kind of test all of your assumptions every single step along the way before going to production and potentially impacting your end users and having to field an unpleasant phone call from a customer.
Thank you for that, Liran. And anybody who missed it, Ben posted some a great link in the chat. This is something we use internally, is a sandbox environment. Ben, confirm, I believe there's zero cost to this as a developer environment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So by all means, build out a test environment, do your testing in there, beat your brains out without actually, as Liran says, affecting an end user that's going to generate a phone call.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great place to start. And we've even got some of our partners have set up simple tenancies in there and run some automated testing. So, logging in from outside of approved locations, doing big data downloads, whatever it is that you would recognize as bad guy behavior that you might want to monitor and trigger on. So by all means, I would encourage people to explore that.
Yep. And that will come with, data already preloaded for you as well. And also Adam dropped a link in the chat too for a test instance from there too. Awesome. Thank you, Adam.
Guys, we're coming up to the top of the hour. Is there anything that we want to cover before the, I don't know, end of the year? And if there's nothing else on anybody's tip of their tongue, I'd like to say thank you all for your participation in this. I look forward to picking this up again in January. And I'd like to personally reach out and wish each and every one of you and your families nothing but the best of the coming holidays and all into the new year.
Same. And thank you, Liran, for joining us. That was awesome.
Oh, yes. And thank you, Liran.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks for having
It's like
me.
an early Christmas gift in my advent calendar.
Because we were just going to sit around here and stare at each other. So,
alrighty. Then I think that'll do it. Y'all have a great afternoon, and we'll see you again in the new year.
see you guys.
Happy holidays, guys.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Bye-bye.